This is Akiko Maeker. I'm recording this message to convey a couple of things. One is that, as many of you may know, that I live in just outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul of Minnesota in the US. So I have been receiving quite a few of emails, text messages, line messages, messenger texts, a lot of communication from friends and colleagues in the US and outside, asking if I'm safe and asking how I'm doing and how my family is doing. So I'd like to share a little bit about how my life has been in the last week, particularly from the personal perspective. And secondly, I like to share a little bit of my professional perspective into the recent events and a series of events following. First of all, so how has this past week and a half been for me? I'd like to speak to that. As for many or all of you, it has been a challenging time. We were already going through a challenging situation due to COVID-19 situation, pandemic globally. In addition to that already challenging time, we just witnessed a painful death of our fellow Minnesotan, Mr. George Floyd, right here in Minneapolis, in our community. Since then, since that Memorial Day night, we have been experiencing and witnessing a series of protesting as well as very violent riots. It has been a very, very difficult week. As for myself and my family, we have been safe. We live in a suburban area of Minneapolis, St. Paul, just outside. Our neighborhood has been very quiet for the most part, aside from stepping out the house and seeing some smoke covering part of the sky that we can see from our neighborhood, caused by some of the fires in the past days. Other than that, we have been safe. So those of you who have been concerned about our safety and well-being, thank you. Professionally, I have been quite busy. That's a good busy though. As many of you know, I operate a business, small business called Interculturalists with my two partners. And we have client organizations, many in Minnesota, some outside, and some even outside the US, who are our partners in advancing their diversity, equity, and inclusion work within their organizations. And in that work, we support our clients to advance the DEI work through the lens of what we call workplace efficacy. What we mean by that is we engage in this work through developing in a cultural capacity of the organization, as well as emotional intelligence of the people that work in the organization. So these client organizations have been reaching out to us to request additional sort of urgent support to them. What we have been doing this past week and a half, has been largely facilitating listening sessions, creating a space for dialogue for individuals to come together and process their emotions, process their thoughts, and hold a place and space for acknowledging the reactions that each of us are having. And I have been providing additional consultations and feedback to the executive leadership teams of the organizations that we partner with. Because in my experience, senior leaders of many organizations out there, especially in the Twin Cities here in Minnesota, are more than ever committed to their desire to protect, support, and guide their employees and staff members. But sometimes in this type of extreme circumstance, leaders need additional support in terms of having their own sounding board or to gain insight and feedback from so-called experts, I guess, in the realm of diversity, equity, and inclusion as the situation relates to difficult to see injustice in society. So I have been doing my very best, my professional best, to be that support and to be that sounding board and to be the person to offer ideas to a lot of the senior leaders that I've been working with already. So that's what I've been up to in the past week, back to back meetings, and responding to the best of my ability between meetings in the forms of phone calls, emails, text messages. So that's what I've been up to. And many of you I know have been asking yourselves, what's the action I can take? What do I need to do? And for me, my action at this point so far is to be that support to the clients that I already have. How about you? I bet you that each of you have been engaged in your own action, whether it being going out and engaging in a peaceful protest, whether it be being be a supportive colleague to each other, or maybe for some of you it has meant to stay home and to stay safe. So whatever it is that you have been doing in the last week, you have been doing your best. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. That has been my observation with the people that I'm connected with. That being said, I'd like to speak to something else in this video, which is really to think about the role that we each are going to take going forward. And in talking about this, I like to use the language that comes from one of my professional mentors for years. Dr. Mitchell Hammer, who is the developer of this online tool, assessment tool called the IDI, Intercultural Development Inventory. Anyway, so what I have learned in the last couple of years, I guess it was at the IDI conference we had 2 years ago, Dr. Hammer talked about two distinct roles that we can play in society to create societal change. One role is called an advocate, and the other role is called a developer. And the work of advocacy and the work of development have to go hand in hand to support each other. And what we have been witnessing recently in protests and demonstrations of seeking justice, not only for Mr. Floyd, but for all Black community members, as well as other people of color and others who have been seeking justice for a long time. Advocacy has been very visible in the last week. Many individuals who are playing the role of advocates have been out on streets, out in front of governmental institutions, in front of police force, protesting and demonstrating and advocating. And the work of advocacy really is to awaken us and remind us and the importance of the change, that is, and open up a path, open up a space for us to create new change, create sustainable paths towards true change in society. In this past week, we've been seeing this advocacy work at play here in Minnesota and other parts in the US and globally. Now, the work of development, the work of developers have to come in together with the work of advocacy. And that is the role I personally play, as well as many of my colleagues that I work with. The role of us developers is to go into this open space that advocates created for us, for all of us, and go hand in hand with the advocates to say, what is it that we need moving forward? What are the changes that we need? Let's define the changes we need, and let's design the steps that we need to take. And let's identify the education and learning that need to take place in order for all of us to begin to take those steps towards sustainable change. The education, the learning and development that we need and steps that we need to take, and actually implementing that learning process, developmental process that we need for the sustainable change. That's the work of developers. And to be clear, probably nobody is 100% advocate or 100% developer. You have both. Everybody has both in us. But we need to know what it is, what the role is that we are playing. When you are out marching, when you are out protesting and demonstrating for the cause that we believe in, you are being an advocate. Your job is to raise awareness, remind ourselves of the important cause, and opening up that space for learning, space for dialogue, space for beginning to create the change. Now, when you go into that space and commit to the ongoing change making, designing of the future, you are being a developer. that's the arena and space that I personally commit to. How about you? I'd like to invite all of my friends and colleagues to think with me, to intentionally take the roles that we want to take and that roles that we can be effective in. I don't want to make this video too long, so one last thing to say in this particular video is that let's take actions. Let's take actions, but let's also be mindful that our actions are different from reactions. When something distressful happens, we react. And some reactions can be very helpful, but other reactions can be negative, can bring a negative effect. So let's take care of ourselves and to allow ourselves to pay attention to what reactions we're having, so that based on the acknowledgement of our own reactions, we can thoughtfully choose our response, our response instead of reaction, so that we can take actions that are thoughtful response to the current challenge that we're faced with, not only reacting. That will be my invitation to my friends and colleagues to process with me. Thank you for watching, and I will attempt to record some more videos as I go, as I engage in a sustainable work change ahead, and share my thoughts with you, and share my own process with you, with the hope that it may be helpful for some of you to hear and then to use in your own reflection and your own action building. Thank you. Stay safe and well.